Raising an Angler is brought to you by geospeaks.live.
So, growing up, everyone's been told to go take a kid fishing, but nobody has ever been taught how to take a kid fishing. So, today we're here with my dad, and we're going to go through some of the simple beginning steps on taking a kid fishing in the outdoors. So, Dad, growing up, we didn't have a whole lot of rules when you took us outside. Why is that, and why is that so important?
Well, there's a big difference between rules and principles. And when you're learning how to grow up in the outdoors, you need to learn a lot of principles because those principles are what helps you make wise decisions. Rules are things that you just don't do. And pretty much the only rule that you guys had when we were taking you out hunting and fishing growing up was never get cold, never get hungry. And that's a hard and fast rule when you're first taking a kid out fishing or hunting.
Growing up, it's very important, looking back on it, making sure you have something with so you can keep focused on the task at hand.
Well, and what's important about that rule, especially when you're taking new anglers out, the thing that parents or whoever's taking that young angler out, or even a first-time angler or somebody that's out hunting, is to understand their limitations. Never get cold, never get hungry is important because we don't want to have somebody out there getting cold because we all know that when we're warm, we're happy. When we're cold, we're frustrated and stuff. And that's where some of those bad horror stories come from, is when kids are out hunting and fishing for the first time and they got cold, they don't want to ever go back and do it again.
Yeah, because it's always important, if you want to have someone learn and understand something, keeping them engaged is the best way to keep them going further and further into the future.
Correct. And so that's pretty much, that's the reason we had that one rule: never get cold, never get hungry. Now what's interesting about that rule is that's a rule that, like you just mentioned, we kind of do away with the older you get, because once somebody's engaged and really wants to be part of the outdoors, that's when you have to start stretching yourself and your kids. And so there's days where we stayed out longer, and that's to help with self-confidence. And like you're a great example. There was days we had to drag you off the ice no matter how cold or hungry you were, because you were so engaged in fishing that you didn't care about being cold or hungry.
So you just mentioned something about limitations and capabilities. Expand on that.
So every person has capabilities and limitations. Attention span is a huge one for kids. Some kids have an attention span that's really long when it comes to the outdoors, and some have a really short attention span when it comes to the outdoors. Some kids can handle the cold, some kids can't. Some kids can handle holding a spinning rod at an early age. A great example is all four of you kids learned how to use a spinning rod and reel at the same amount of time, but all at different ages, because your capabilities at that age were different. So as parents or people taking new anglers in the outdoors, we need to understand those capabilities and limitations. We got to make sure that we never ask a kid to do something that's a limitation for them, but expand on their capabilities.
I've seen people trying to get their kids for the first time drilling holes with the auger, and they're spinning in a circle and not doing too well. So
yeah, and that never goes well. So the saddest thing for me is watching when a kid goes out on their first ice fishing trip or their first hunting trip, and they come back and they don't ever want to do it again because of the bad experience. Well, asking somebody to do something that's a limitation for them is one of those big hallmark things that makes that a bad experience. So, but when you allow a kid to do something that's part of their capabilities and praise them for that, then that's those things that help reinforce how much fun that was in the outdoors.
yeah, being able to start off simple and build your way up and achieve that next goal, even if it's as simple as hooking a minnow in a different way.
Yeah, it's always important. Never take a kid out in the outdoors and just have them be there. Give them jobs to do, make them part of the experience. That's because when we're raising kids in the outdoors, part of that is raising kids that are self-sufficient. So the earlier you give them jobs, and then once they accomplish one job well, then that's when you give them the next job. So once they're skimming holes and they're not dropping skimmers down the hole, then that's when you help them start setting up slip bobber rods or tip ups or something like that. I think one of the keys to taking kids in the outdoors is having a goal. Yeah. And the goal that we set out every time we took you guys out, and what we teach parents, is to make sure that every time you take your kids out, you have a positive outdoor experience. That's not saying it was really fun. That's
Yep.
not saying it wasn't hard at sometimes, but that it was a positive experience. And one of the biggest keys to that is knowing when to go home.
So, it's important to have a kid, not only be engaged, but be excited to go the next time and not be upset. So, how do you know when that key time is to either go or go home?
What's important about this is you have to understand your kids or the kid you're taking fishing, because the answer to that question is really simple and really complicated at the same time, and that is before they ask to leave. If a kid asks to leave, you've been there too long.
Yep.
Okay. And what's the way I like to explain it is, I would love to take a kid off the ice, out of that outdoor experience, and have them be upset that they're still not there, because that gets them wanting to go back. But if a kid asks to go, that means they probably got cold. They're no longer having fun. It means they've had too much already. And 9 times out of 10, when a kid asks to leave, that means that you've waited too long, and now that's going to be a negative experience in that kid's mind. A great example of this is the Christmas fishing trips with you and your cousins. How long were those trips?
They weren't very long. I think I can recall one time, we were only out on the ice for an hour.
And if it's a 1-hour trip, that's okay. It's all about having fun out there. So if you take a group of anglers out, you go for an hour and you come back, that's worth it, because in the long run. As adults, what we're guilty of when we take kids fishing is we come up with these grand plans, and it's going to be the epic fishing day, and we need to call the taxidermist because on Monday, because we went fishing on Saturday, and it's all going to be awesome and the coolest thing ever, and we get the kids all psyched up about going fishing, and then it's a snow day, and now that's a negative outdoor experience. Because we all know that weather always does what you want it to.
Exactly.
So always have a backup plan. Don't make a big deal out of it. Make a big deal about the experience that you get to have with those kids that day. And don't make it be a super long trip. Make it be something that's important to those kids at that time.
Yeah, having a backup plan, and more importantly, using your resources. You mentioned that, when we found this lake we took all of our cousins to go fish, we called the fisheries biologist. And that's a huge piece of information that a lot of people don't realize that they could utilize to be successful outside.
I think when you're taking kids fishing, don't ever be afraid to ask for help. And if there's an angler that doesn't give you help to take kids fishing, they're not a really good angler. Game and Fish will help. A lot of sportsmen's groups will help. The one thing I will say is, be honest. If you're going to take kids fishing, tell people, hey, I'm taking some kids fishing. What's the best place to do? Do not say I'm taking kids fishing and then go fish out a spot with you and your buddies. That's just bad karma.
So with all of this wrapped up, it's important to make sure that you understand your angler or first-time outdoorsman, know what they're capable of doing and what their limitations are. And that's the basics to taking a kid fishing.
Yep, and if you do that, you might end up having a kid running a tackle company and running a TV show. So I'd be careful.
Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.